Welcome everyone to Click Moments, where the right information at the right time is a portal from where you are to where you want to be. I'm your host, Beth Orr. I'm trained as a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm an authenticity and intuition guide, which means that I am committed to walking alongside people and helping to equip as people are trying to find that authentic version of themselves. And what I mean by that is who you are uniquely here to be, what uniquely lights you up, what gives you a tremendous amount of peace, joy, love, connection, and belonging. That's the life that gives us such purpose. It gives us a reason to be tremendously hopeful in this life. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video cast and podcast. We are going to have conversations, interviews, consistent co-hosts that really draw out what is happening in this world. What is beyond our vision and ability to currently see that can really guide us as we're moving forward and help us to tap into this type of authentic life that we're all seeking. We're seeking something, and oftentimes what we're seeking is a more honest and true version of ourselves. And when we have a place to go to where we can go deeper, to have a broader understanding of what's happening in the world, that is a place of tremendous respite. I know what it's like to be burned out, to be exhausted by the pace that this world seems to demand of us. But is it true that we have to work and produce in a way that completely depletes us? I don't feel like it is. And I don't feel like it is because I found a new pace and a way of existing in this world that isn't playing by those rules. And it has brought me a tremendous amount of peace, love, and joy in my life. Sure, I have times where I have other emotions. I'm a human being who's completely invested in the full range of emotions in this world. But the reality is that we can have a sustainable way to give our gifts that does have a resting state of peace, love, and joy that's firmly connected to the humanity and extending compassion to the people around us, that we're wide awake and willing to look for and eager to look for opportunities to extend empathy and kindness and compassion to other people, but still that we're doing it from a filter and a framework that is sustaining to us. We get to choose that. But in order to find that, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be willing to take a path that may be different than the one that we're taking right now. And it may actually not be what the majority of people around us are doing. So having a safe place to explore what that looks like, having a vision for how myself and other people in my life and who I hope to meet are doing that, that's a place where we can grow when we start to see that there's another way in order to live in this world, beyond this frenetic pace that most of us know is not healthy, is not safe. And once we see that there's a different way, we can start walking in that direction. So I went to many other thought leaders. I have sought out books and podcasts and had conversations with people who are doing things in a different way. And what's always been interesting to me is that I get this little nudge inside me to lean in. Like, woo, what's happening with this person? That's our intuition. When there's something inside of us that says yes, we get this emphatic yes, we lean in. And that part of us is our truth part. The part that says, this feels safe, this feels good, this feels right. And that intuition is actually being supplied. It's like connected to energy beyond us in the universe. And so that goodness, that love, whatever that frequency is of the emotion or the energy that feels supplying, is pulling us, is drawing to us answers that can supply us on our path in a journey. And it's so much better than the muscling through that we have believed that we need to do, that it needs to be so demanding and hard, and that we just have to push so much in order to create something valuable in this world. And that's just not true. Now it is and has been true up to now because that's all we've known. But just like every other time in our society, we've evolved. Once we know new information, we evolve, we use it. And so when we use new information that makes sense to us, we get to pay attention to, does this work for us? Does this supply us? Does this resonate with me? Do I want to integrate this into my life? And so you're going to have things that you're going to hear in this podcast and videocast that are going to resonate specifically to you. I may say 25 minutes of things, or I may have conversations with people, but one particular thing resonates with you. That's because that's your intuition saying, ooh, this is important to me right now at this particular juncture in my journey. But what might stand out to somebody else is something different. And that's because we each are on our unique and authentic paths. And so we get this opportunity to listen to what stands out to us. This information is actually a portal. When you accept that nod and you accept that this nudge is something that you're going to lean into, this is where that right information at the right time is a portal from who you are right now, where you are right now, to where you want to be. And where you want to be can be as vague as an emotion. I want more peace. I want more love. I want more light. I want more joy. I want more connection and belonging in my life. It may be as vague as that right now, or it could be as specific as a dream or a vision that you have, that you're like, oh, I feel like this piece of information is giving me the one next right step on this path towards this life that I'm trying to create. It's always one next step after another. It's never these huge leaps. It's one step. And so when we listen to that intuition and that nod and we take the action towards that step, that's how we get there. And it's typically what I've found. It's so interesting because it used to be really specific and it had to be very detailed and clear. Like I had to know every single step as if I was on that path. Like I had to know all of it. So for example, like when you go on, when you're getting a degree, you know the 4 years, the types of classes that you're going to take along the entire path to get to where you want to be. You don't necessarily know all of the information on that path, but you know every single step. But if somebody says, yeah, we're going to take you from here to here in this degree, but they don't tell you any details. Sometimes we don't even know that end. We don't even know what the degree is. We just know it's an emotion. It's going to be something that when we take this one step, that the next one is going to present itself, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. That is a very different way of living that can bring a tremendous amount of anxiety to us, unless we hear stories of other people who have taken those exact steps. And when they've taken the step, the road has risen, and then the road again, and the road again, and the road again. And it doesn't mean that every single part of our life will be that vague. But when we start to understand that it's okay to have a vague understanding, a general direction, more peace, love, and joy, and the next step is this, as we start to see other people living those types of lives, then it gives us confidence that our own next right step is enough. It's enough. Many times, this intuition, if you think about it, is completely invisible. It's mystical. You're like, well, how do I know that this is something that I can follow? But yet, when you've followed and trusted that intuition, it's led you somewhere. Maybe it's the right partner in your life or a spouse that you have. Maybe it's a career choice that you've taken, or the desire to build a family, or to move to this particular area in the world. There is usually a very intangible, just inner knowing that you have, this emphatic yes, or but you've taken a risk. You had no idea how those things were going to end up. You've taken a risk. And so as you're taking these risks, because we don't know where they're going to lead. That's why we call them that, because we have no idea. There's no definitive confidence that we have that it's going to end up where we want. But once we start to realize and distinguish between an emphatic yes that we know is going to lead to some place that is way beyond what our ability to create a life for ourselves. It's way beyond. It has much more infinite solutions when we tap into this inner intuition and knowing, because it's tapped and connected to universal consciousness that can guide us in a way that has infinite solutions. It's way beyond what we can create on our own. And I want to give you some examples of what this looks like, because I think it can feel really scary as we're going along and we don't have a real understanding of what's possible. So for me, when I was looking at doing this podcast, I've been called to do this podcast. The universe has been nudging me to do this for 3 to 4 years. How you know something is yours to do is it doesn't let go of you. Sometimes we have things that we're like, oh, we thought about doing that, and then we forgot about it. And 4 years later, we're like, oh, what about that thing? But it's not been pulling on us the whole time. We just had this passing remembrance of something from the past. That's probably not a calling. A calling or something that you're uniquely here to do pulls on you. It's like something that you keep saying, ooh, like, I feel like I'm supposed to do this. And it like stays with you pretty consistently. Like for you not to do it, oftentimes you have to suppress it, or you have to deny it or push it down. You try to push it away, but it's always kind of there whispering inside you, hey, don't forget about me. I think this could be fun. This could bring me a tremendous amount of joy. Ooh, or I'm curious. I wonder what could happen if I follow this path. So the podcast has been like that for me. And so in this podcast, in order to talk about the types of things, the types of conversations that we're going to have with people as they live their authentic lives, I thought it would be interesting to actually share the story of how the podcast came to me. So a couple things. First of all, one of the most important people in my life was my grandmother. She passed away last year, and I was there at the end of her life, the morning after she passed away, the very first morning. I woke up to, like, literally, I wake up and something is rushing through me. Literally, this inspired knowledge is passing through me. I frantically grab a piece of paper and I grab a pen and I'm just writing it down. For 25 minutes, I'm writing down information. When I finish, I'm like almost breathless. Like I've just caught the tail of something and I just gotten it all down. And I come outside my door and I meet my mom, whose bedroom is across the house. And we've never exited our rooms at the exact same time and looked at each other and walked to the coffee pot at the same time. In the 25 years that she's lived there, we've never had this experience, no matter how many times I've lived there. Yet this morning, the morning after her mother and my grandmother has passed away, we are both up at the same time, and I've just written 25 minutes of inspired writing. As I'm telling her over coffee in the front room about what has come through me, she's like, where did this come from? She's confused. And I explained to her, from the ethers, from outside of me, but it's now in me and it's embodied and I'm experiencing it. And then it hit me. This is a podcast. Now I've kind of had an idea over the last year or two that I wanted to do a podcast, or this podcast was coming to me that I should do, but I hadn't done it. But the morning after my grandmother has passed, it becomes clear to me that I have something to say. And this is part of it. This episode that I will be doing, and what came out came through me. So she was giving me that nod. right after that, I look beyond her as she's going, this is certainly interesting. She's a little more skeptical than me. And she's like, this is quite compelling. This is interesting. What you're talking about sounds interesting to her. She's like, tell me more. This seems important. And as I'm telling her, I look beyond her and I see a hawk land on a mailbox across the street. I've never seen a hawk land on a mailbox across the street. It's looking at me through the window. I go outside, stand outside for 20 minutes, and the hawk and I are looking at each other. Now, the hawk is important to me because a hawk is actually my spirit animal. And we're going to get into spirit animals more in further episodes, but you're just going to have to trust me that it is at this particular juncture. The hawk then, after 20 minutes, flies into the back of the house. In the back of the house, set up, is my podcast information. It's my computer and my microphone. All of it is set up outside. And I'm like, do the podcast. I hear it. Do the podcast, right? This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm scared to do. But it's what I know is mine to step towards. So that's the first story. Fast forward 3 months. It takes me a few months to get my head wrapped around the loss that I've had of my grandmother. And then the podcast keeps coming to me. I mean, it's just relentless. So I'm sitting at a table over there at this window. And I'm like, universe, if you want me to do this podcast, I at least need a title and an idea of the first episode. And so have that be easy. Well, I write down an episode that's 30 minutes, like literally over 30 minutes. I'm writing down different things and it's super easy. And I'm like, well, I still don't have a title. And all of a sudden I hear in my mind, and this is where we're going to talk about how intuition talks to us. I've been cultivating that for a while. So I know that in my mind's eye, information can come to me. So in my mind's eye, it came to me, go for a walk, put on your tennis shoes. And I'm like, go for a walk. I just, was inspired. I came up with a 30-minute podcast. Like, I'm excited. I don't feel the need to go for a walk. I feel really motivated to go for a walk. Okay. So I put on my tennis shoes and I go outside and I'm like, am I supposed to listen to something? Am I supposed to go somewhere? I ask that question and I hear, listen to Oprah, the very last episode of Super Soul Sessions. I turn it on. While I'm listening to it, it's Stephen Pressfield. And I'm like, I don't know Stephen Pressfield. And the universe very clearly says to me, I'm trying to give you new information. I'm like, oh, I'm listening to somebody I don't know talking about something that I'm not aware of so that I can get new information. Stephen Pressfield is talking about how when we get a calling in the world or something that we feel comes from outside of us that we feel inspired to walk towards, that 100% of the time there is resistance on the other side of it. Now, as he's talking, I'm picturing yin and yang, and I'm thinking about how if 100% of the time when I have a calling like the podcast, there's resistance on the other side, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. It's not my fear. It's not, all these things aren't me. It's actually the entity, much like the podcast and what I'm supposed to be doing or what I want to do is something that I'm giving and is generative and expansive. Just like that, all of the resistance, the fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, the unknown is on the opposite side. It's always an entity that comes along with the calling. Well, I'm excited when I hear this. This just makes sense to me. And I am like rushing back to my apartment. As I get to my apartment to write down some inspired recollections of what was important from this episode, I say out loud, wow, that was a click moment. When I say this, it hits me. That's the name of this podcast, Click Moment, because the last 2 weeks of my grandmother's life, unknown to us why she would say this, she was constantly saying, click, 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 click. And she was talking about a camera, taking a picture. And it was important, given the end of her life, what she was saying this about. And it made sense in the context of what was happening at the end, what she was saying and how she was saying it. But the veil is thin between this world and the other world at the end of somebody's life. So when the veil is thin for them, they can listen to and pull information from the other side. And if you are so inspired and you are listening for what the universe is saying to you, you will just say it without regard for why you're saying it. There were many messages from the other side of the veil that she gave me in that time that are important to my life now, but that was a huge one. Click was when I said, wow, that was a click moment. It made sense of everything that I had wanted to do that hadn't made sense before. It was a click moment for me that every single idea and concept and conversation that I had written for years, that I had practiced for years, made sense through the filter of, these are click moments. These were click moments for me. The stories will be click moments for other people in their own way, according to whatever it is along their path, whatever information they need to hear. But click moments was the message that got to me through that interaction. By listening to my intuition, acting on it, and just going for a walk and listening to the podcast episode that came through me. How could I possibly have known that podcast episode was the one to listen to? I didn't. What I did know, though, was when I heard it, that was my next right step. And by listening to that next right step, it gave me a piece of information that I was asking for that then contributed to what I'm here to do. And that's this podcast and this videocast. We're going to have those kinds of conversations. Sometimes I'm going to be talking just like I am right now and sharing from an inspired place, given something that's happened. Other times I'm going to interview people. I have so many people that I have lined up to talk to you about and to share incredible stories about how people have inspired me through their authentic and intuitive following. It's amazing. And I want to share those conversations with you so that you also can benefit and be inspired by the lives that people are choosing to live that are very non-traditional, that give us hope that there's a different way of living in this world. And I'm also going to have co-hosts that come on pretty regularly. I'm sure that there will be more that come along as I go, but I'm not always the one that's the right person, or there could be a benefit to having additional people co-host through our conversations, or to bring somebody in to help interview somebody that I'm going to be interviewing. I want to keep this fluid. The one unifying ingredient will be our title, me, and the thought for why this is all here about getting, right information at the right time, right? To have these click moments for you. But other than that, I'm going to leave space for intuition. I'm going to leave space for creativity to come through. So a couple of co-hosts that will be joining. One person is Dr. LaShanda Brown, who is a holistic functional medicine practitioner who is going to talk with me about holistic health. In our society, our health, our Western system could be so much more expanded. And so we're going to talk about how we can look at our health differently from a holistic lens and from a space of really trying to not look at it from a disease mindset, but how there's so much going right with us. And we're going to have conversations about that. But she and I are also really interested in authentic relationships, partnerships, communities. And so we're going to talk about, what does that even look like? We have all these traditional views about relationships, and I think we're struggling in this society, which is why we have such a high divorce rate and relationships aren't working. We're struggling to fit who we are into this traditional lens. So we're going to have an expanded conversation about relationships. And the second person is Bridget Querns, and she is a coach who also helps people to amplify their potential. And she is just a great conversationalist with an expanded view of understanding of how this world is working. And so we actually have joined up for a separate podcast. It's called Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits, The Unfolding, because we just have conversations. We have no idea where they're going. We have a general topic, and then we just riff from there. And from our shared conversation, new concepts and understandings tend to come from that every single time. So we're just following that. And but she may be coming on to my podcast, or we're definitely going to be sharing our joint episodes on my link, so you can have access to those conversations also. So that's a little bit of a glimpse of a little teaser for what you can expect moving forward. I hope that this has been really inspiring and exciting to you. If this resonates and you feel nudged to share this with somebody else, please do. I welcome it getting to as many people as possible. And also, I want to give a special thanks to Micah Mackenzie. He's the amazing photographer and artist that is responsible for my cover art for Click Moments. So a special shout out to Micah, who you can connect with on Instagram. You'll see his account through Micah Mackenzie. So thank you all for being here today. I'll see you next time, and peace, love, and light to you, my friends.